I will begin this presentation with a short introduction. And in this introduction, I would say that whatever we will see here is completely different from whatever you can see in other media or sciences. A few weeks ago, one of the most important companies in the internet, the AOL, made a big loss to the Ted Turner company, a $100 billion loss. And this is important to us because that shows that whatever is working in real life and in the real economy, it's not working in the internet economy, and it's not working in this arena as in the real world. There are a lot of users at the internet. This is about 600 million of users around the world, around 200 million in the United States and 200 million in Europe, and most of them are young people. These young people are very influenced by this media, and whatever they see here and whatever they get from the internet is very important for their life. This influence is used by the hate groups and all kinds of other groups to confirm some kinds of foreign ideas that they can have from different places, and also they can introduce new ideas, also using the forums, the discussion forums, and also using the sometimes also they are giving emails to these people on their subjects. These technologies is what we are going to see now. Some of them I will show also the contents, also the different technologies that they use. Almost everybody now everywhere can be an internet user. Also, everybody almost can put on online a site. It doesn't matter if it's a big commercial company or if it's only one person sitting at his house and doing the same thing. They are reaching the same kind of the same amount of audience by doing. It doesn't matter how much money do you have. You are reaching the same amount of people. And this is important because it's not the same as television, that if you don't have enough money, you cannot be there. Here, everybody can be there, and you are influencing the same amount of people anyway. In these 2 years, there are a big, the last 2 years, there is a big growth in anti-Semitic sites, and some of them I'm going to show you now. Okay, this is the first one. You can see they use also Latin. This is the lenda is Judaica, says delete or destroy the Jews. And here every part of this site has a link to an article, and every one of these is another link to another article. As you can see, this is a huge site, a huge site because every one of these is a link to other links. And you can see the subjects. Jewish occupied governments, Jewish organizations, Jewish mechanism to destroy the white race, Jewish reference and documents, financial, yes, all the Jewish politics, what we do to Christianity, etc. This is what you can find in one of these links. This is a book called The Poisonous Mushrooms. Of course, we are the poisonous mushrooms, the Jews. And this is a book for children that was published in Germany in the 30s. And here you have every chapter online in full text. Okay, this is another another site. You have here Jewish hate groups, Jewish communist rulers and killers, Jewish Zionist Soviet anti-American spies, and every one of these is a link. That means that everyone is a document that have links to other documents. אני צריכה קול, אין לי קול.
מה כתוב שם? פוליטיקס ומה?
Politics and terrorism.
סליחה?
Terrorism.
טוב, לא ראינו.
Okay. 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 Israeli oppression and subjugation of the Palestinians. This, whatever it says, is not so important. The thing is that they use the, things that are very appealing to some special people, and these they use, of course, voice and image, and this is Zionist occupation government and Jewish occupation government. These are the initials, and this is some special, well, this is what happened. This is something that is interesting for us too, because whatever you can find today, you can't find tomorrow. These sites are changing every day. They are on and down every day, almost. This is another kind of site. And how you can see, it's very different from the other one. But the messages are almost the same. This is the Word Church of the Creator. And you see here they put the Star of David, what is not there, but this is Bush, that is, of course, behind, we are behind him. The state of Israel is behind Bush. And whatever happened at the Twin Towers is because of the Mossad. And all is here. This is the big conspiracy that is, of course, you can see here, but there they are, the eyes, the conspiracy. Here you can find the the Jews are destroying the United States, and some place down here, you can find the book of Ford, the Eternal Jew, the International Jew. Really? Okay, I will go on for the Nazi sites. This is this is in Spanish. This is the Rawa. This is the racial holy war. This is the American National Nazi Party. This is the Occidental Pan-Aryan Crusader, and here you have almost every book that you can imagine on Hitler and everything in its Mein Kampf online in full text. This is the British National Party, and I don't have sound. Yes. Okay. Okay, here you can see they are using also the 9 of November as a symbol. That is is also the night of the Kristallnacht, and it's also the night of the first putsch of Hitler, and it's also I don't know if it's somehow related, but it's also 9/11 is like 11 nines, so I don't know, maybe it is. This is the Ku Klux Klan that you will know. Of course, they said that this is Ku Klux Klan, and if you are not, oh, and this is very interesting. You can look for sex offender in your state. They have a database. And here are the Holocaust deniers. This is a huge site where you can. The main issue of this site is to show you that whatever is said about the concentration camps and the death camps is not true. And they have pictures and explanations on each part of the camps and whatever they are, and of course that it couldn't be truth. This is another Holocaust denier. This is Bradley Smith, David Irving. These ones, I just passed them. This is his focal point. This is the Sundel site. Sundel is now in jail because some kind of immigration problem he had in the United States, and his wife is managing the site. This is another Holocaust denier. And here we come to the big white church, white group of supremacists. This is the Storm Front. This is one of the first sites online. This is the white power also. This is Tov Shebegoi Marog, kill the best Gentiles, and this is what they said we say. Of course, they use the Talmud to say what we say about the Goyim. And this is a white man's radio. But I don't know. Okay.
You are listening to the White Man's Radio, White Man's Live Internet Radio broadcast.
Okay, and now you can enter the radio and hear all the white radio for, of course, the appropriate program. I will go, I have only 3 minutes, so I will show something very interesting. And this is a program that is called Who's a Jew? And this is a database that you can enter a name and you can know if he's Jew or not, and in what position in the United States government or in media they have. And if you don't want to install this program, so you have it here online, the Jews in magazines and newspapers, the Jews in radio, and of course you open it and you, in media companies, and you have what are all the groups that have Jews and what position they have and how they control, of course, all America and Europe. Another thing that I didn't reach, but in the last years, we have a big growth of sites that are, of course, anti-Zionist, or I call them anti-Zionist, and they are, I can see, like they are using this kind of words like Israeli Holocaust or Jewish authors _ Israeli Holocaust against Palestinian, and they use the name of Israeli authors, that is this one, that is Michael Hoffman and Moshe Lieberman, that wrote a book that is called The Israeli Holocaust Against the Palestinians. And they is, of course, all the web is just now very glad of these two persons. Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for this striking presentation.
Yes.
And interestingly, there's some parallels between some of these hate sites and Jewish sites.
Yes, right.
In the same thing. I'm sure in
Yes.
the discussion there will be questions about
Yes.
how popular these sites are, how
Okay.
you estimate their overall girth and so forth. And still within the land of internet, we will be turning to Dr. Mike Dahan of Ben-Gurion University, who was one of the first political scientists in Israel and worldwide to really address the internet as a new element shaping and having an impact on international relations and on the political process. Mike has published extensively on these interrelated topics, and now he's moving, I understand, much closer to civic society and the internal, rather the international effect. So how these two aspects will be seen in internet, or it will be, of course, very interesting.
To be honest, it's actually rather strange for me to be giving this talk today. Most of my academic career has been devoted to understanding the positive and empowering effects of the internet for progressive organizations that compose civil society. and for disadvantaged groups in society. As such, I've focused on primarily left-wing groups, organizations, and movements, as well as other groups that present a positive message to the public. I've also devoted a great deal of energy to using the web in order to advance cooperation and understanding among Arabs and Israelis. I do believe that the architecture and unique characteristics of the Internet and computer-mediated communication can contribute to the achievement of what most of us would accept as positive goals. Yet in preparing this talk, I was forced to look into some of the deepest and darkest crevices of the Internet. One of the questions posed to me by one of the judges of my doctoral dissertation a few years back was, why do you focus only on progressive groups in your dissertation? The question was perfectly justified. Indeed, hate groups are a part of civil society as well, together with peace and women's groups, ecological and health organizations, religious groups, anti-globalization movements, and anti-war movements. Hate groups are simply the flip side of the same coin of civil society. For those of you that are not sociologists, political scientists, civil society is that arena composed of voluntary organizations which in liberal democracies function with relative autonomy from the state and economic power. These groups, organizations, and social movements seek to influence policy and decision-making and to spread their agendas among the public. The Internet as such supports lateral institutions of society, forms of association among people that are based on shared interests and situations rather than on hierarchical authority or individual relationships to a center such as the government or news media. I will now turn to a discussion on how the Internet is used to achieve these goals. Communication media may be distinguished by three possible ways in which to connect people. The first way of connecting people is one-to-one, essentially face-to-face communication, meetings, facsimiles, telephones, all examples of one-to-one communication. The second type of communication is one-to-many, connecting one sending location with multiple receiving locations. Broadcast media such as radio, television, newspapers, talks like this, are all forms of one-to-one communication. One-to-many communication, thank you. Computer-mediated communication falls into the third category of many-to-many, connecting multiple sending locations with multiple receiving locations. Many-to-many communication combines the personal and interactive quality of one-to-one media with the broadcast capability of one-to-many communication. Each party is a sender, a receiver, and a broadcaster. Computer networks thus greatly speed up the process of people-to-people interchanges of information, ideas, and plans of action at an extremely low cost. Hence, its contribution to the groups that comprise civil society, regardless of whether such groups are progressive, conservative, or in our case, groups that espouse hatred and anti-Semitism. Electronic mail distribution lists and websites provide a low-cost and timely way of distributing targeted information to members and other interested parties. The low cost of narrowcasting and the perceived anonymity of the Internet are particularly appealing as a way of distributing and publicizing confidential or controversial information to a select audience. An online organizer for a white supremacist movement has commented that electronic communication, I'm quoting here, has had a pretty profound effect on a movement whose resources are limited. Tens of millions of people have access to our message if they wish. The access is anonymous and there is unlimited ability to communicate with others of a like mind. Turning now to a discussion of the modes and methods used by hate groups in order to disseminate their message to the Internet, it's important to note that these modes are essentially the same as those used by non-hate groups, with the interesting exception of some of the types of material distributed via the Internet by these groups. Essentially, in the case of hate movements, hate groups, computer games and white power and neo-Nazi music. This is unique to the hate groups. Hate groups were early adopters of computer-mediated communication before the Internet became popular. As far back as the 80s, some of the veteran groups like Stormfront were using BBSs, which were essentially bulletin board services where people would dial in directly to a certain computer in order to download or upload information. Today there are hundreds, if not thousands, of such groups on the Internet, And as well noted and documented by Raymond Franklin's latest hate report on the internet, which was published last month. It's 100 pages long. There's no commentary. It's just a list of websites and discussion groups. The internet offers a powerful tool for communicating and coordinating action. It is inexpensive to use, increasingly pervasive, with an estimated 600 million users today. Groups of any size, from 2 to 1 million, can reach each other and use the net to promote any agenda. Their members and followers can come from anywhere in the world, and the information distributed knows no boundaries. There are essentially 5 modes of use of the internet by civil society groups: collection, publication and distribution, dialogue, coordination of action, and finally, direct lobbying of decision makers. Hate groups on the internet make extensive use of all these modes, but particularly the first 4: collection, publication and distribution, dialogue, and coordination of action. I'd like to discuss the characteristics now of each of these modes. In terms of collection, one way of viewing the internet is as a vast digital library. The web alone offers billions of pages of information, much of which is free. Hate groups may and do use this mode in order to identify other groups and individuals receptive to their messages, gather contact information for potential supporters and collaborators. They may also search for news reports which they see as being supportive of their particular worldview. There are many tools that aid in the collection of information, tools that all of us use every day: search engines, email, distribution lists, chat, and discussion groups. In some cases, the net allows these groups to avoid censorship. This is particularly relevant to groups that exist in countries that restrict hate speech, like Europe. Such groups can host their websites in the US in order to bypass legal restrictions. Often, these sites have training guides with tips on how to make use of the internet in disseminating hatred. In terms of publication and distribution, the internet offers several channels whereby hate groups and individuals can publish and distribute information and disinformation to further their objectives. They can send this through email and post it to news groups. They can and do create their own electronic publications or contribute articles and essays to those of others. They can and do put up websites that serve as a gathering place and a source of information for supporters, potential supporters, and onlookers. A new addition to the technological tool bag is that of peer-to-peer networking, familiar maybe to some of the younger people in the audience here, known also as Napster and Kazaa. It's essentially programs that allow one to connect directly to another computer on the internet and download files. In this case, white supremacist music is widely available from among other users. Okay? This system also provides a system of decentralization. There is no central website to turn to. Okay? You can distribute these files among other people's computers. People connect directly to these computers via the internet as a mediator and download the files. In that sense, it's impossible to close down or to try and censor any of these materials. It's worth noting here that the existence of these groups on the web contributes significantly to the study of them as well as the efforts to combat them. In the words of David Goldman, who directed a small organization called Hate Watch, which was absorbed within the Southern Poverty Law Center a couple of years back, the internet is the greatest thing to happen to hate. It's also the worst thing. One of the reasons that the internet is popular among hate groups is its cost advantage that I mentioned earlier. It's cheaper and easier to post a message to a public forum or to put up a website than it is to operate a television, radio station, or print a newspaper. Distribution is global. They also have full control over the content of the sites. Many of the sites now are making use of video and audio streaming technologies, essentially turning these sites into radio stations, as we saw before, or TV stations with lectures or sermons by activists. Another reason these groups make use of the internet is the perceived sense of anonymity that both the person or the group that sets up the website feels. Again, this anonymity is perceived because a lot of these people can be traced, websites can be blocked. The characteristics of the web also allow for a more focused appeal. Many of these groups target 3 key audiences: children, teenagers, and women. The children and teens are enticed with computer games that underscore the message of hate and frequently allow players to kill Jews, blacks, and other individuals. One of the more advanced games allows players to manage a concentration camp. The distribution of white supremacist music is targeted to teenagers, while women are presented with issues related to family values and the purity of the race. By using the net for publication and distribution, implementers no longer have to send out magazine, books, or videos in brown paper packages to anonymous post office boxes. They can provide an entire multimedia package, readily downloadable, saving considerably on distribution costs. Users no longer have to fear what their neighbors might say if they see them receiving such packages. In terms of dialogue, the Internet offers several venues for dialogue and discourse. These include email, newsgroups, web fora, chat, and various instant messaging tools. Discussions can be confined to closed groups, for example through email or password-protected fora, or it may be open to the public. Hate groups make use of all these tools and often hold virtual online meetings with their supporters. While in the past, these meetings may have taken place in private homes, today these take place online, opening up membership beyond that of a defined geographical border. Dialogue also offers the potential for the creation of support groups for those facing difficulties or ostracism due to their anti-Semitic views. Thus, like-minded individuals can meet and provide support for one another, as is often the case with online communities. They no longer feel that they are alone in their views. In this sense, discussion groups and online communities are much more effective in spreading hate on the web or on the internet than websites are. The degree of interactivity in these communities is extremely high. They provide a sense of focus and belonging for their members and serve to offset the alienation that some of these people may feel. In this sense, the creation of community is more effective than static websites, and while these sites may be an initial entry point into the web of hate, this is augmented through the discussion and dialogue that takes place via email. In this sense, email is a more effective tool than the web. David Goldman, again from Hate Watch, notes that extremists need to be told that what they do is good and right and true. These interactive discussion groups, even more than the web, let them feel hope, like they're participating in a community larger than themselves. These venues allow a safe exploration of extremist ideology, one in which no physical commitment is made. For people who are members, discussion groups have been likened to a virtual cross burning, a kind of hate fest in which participants reinforce one another's racist views. They also allow for the ever more important individual and unconnected activist, the so-called lone wolf, to take part in movement debates and even planning actions without exposing himself. There is evidence that these organizations actually encourage the lone wolf phenomena, which allows the organization and the individual to distance themselves from one another. That is, it provides them with a sense of plausible denial. Going over some of the key points in discussion, I just want to try and focus on the point that email and these online communities are often more effective in spreading hate. The first is privacy. Okay, as opposed to a website, while some of the lists are open, most of them are closed. To people from the outside, they're either password protected or limited. People simply don't know of their existence. For hate groups like the Neo-Confederate League of the South, which poses as a mainstream conservative outfit, this is important. It allows members and even leaders to speak candidly. Okay, the leaders have a tendency to speak more openly inside of these forums than they would in the press or on a website. Persuasion. Discussion groups allow activists to talk personally to potential members who are alienated but not yet convinced racists. Anonymity for sympathizers. It reduces the perceived risk of contacting these groups, notes Todd Schroer, a professor at the University of Southern Indiana. If you go to a Klan rally or actually write to one of these groups to get involved in hate, that's a big barrier to overcome. Through public discussion groups, persons who may be interested in joining can discuss it thoroughly before committing themselves. Planning. Groups like Hammerskin Nation, which puts on several white power music concerts a year, have had consistent trouble with being shut down by anti-racist activists. This way they can do their coordination and their planning quietly without being bothered. Support, and this is particularly important. While it's not safe to publicly brag about, say, beating up Jews or blacks or gays, there are some people who applaud these actions, and even some women who flock to those who carry them out. Discussion groups essentially provide a very warm and loving atmosphere for people involved in these hate groups. In terms of coordination of action, hate groups make great use of the web in coordinating action among members and with other organizations and individuals. Action plans can be distributed by email or posted on websites. Again, services are cheaper and more effective than phone or fax, faster than physical delivery. The internet allows groups like these all over the world to coordinate action without regard to constraints of geography and time. They can form partnerships and coalitions to operate independently. If anyone needs evidence of this, one only needs to look at the highly successful coordination via the internet of the anti-globalization protests over recent years. This is just one of the modes that has not yet been fully used by hate groups, yet the potential is certainly there. Looking towards the future a little bit and summing up, I think it's important to note that while the internet does indeed aid hate groups in spreading their venom, the same characteristics that work for them also contribute to the fight against racism and particularly anti-Semitism. Just as internet allows people to unite for hate, it also allows people to unite against hate. In certain ways, it also makes it easier for researchers and law enforcement personnel to more closely track these groups. Okay, the idea being that if these groups are out in the open and we know where they are, we know where their websites are, we're aware of what's happening. If they're hidden, we don't know. Early writings about the internet, particularly those with a neoliberal slant, tend to view the internet not only as a marketplace for commerce, but also as a marketplace of ideas. This is also a thread in the discourse surrounding freedom of speech and expression, particularly in the United States. The attitude here is that the best way to combat hate speech is with more speech, to drown out the voices of hate and racism. While I personally do not subscribe to neoliberal ideology, I do call on those who are active in organizations, if any of them are present here, that fight hate groups to get online, to educate others to get online, and to provide them with the tools and knowledge with which to combat such groups. Lastly, it's important to remember that technology is neutral. It's people that decide what, how, and why to use technology. Thank you very much.
I was very pleased to hear the note of not only technological pessimism, but some kind of neutrality, even a bit of technological utopianism in Mike's fascinating presentation here. And now we remain in the 21st century, but we're going back to a veteran medium, to film. And we see how film has fared in the thrust of technological change of our period. Hillel Teistel, deputy director and researcher of the Steven Spielberg Jewish Film Archive here at the Hebrew University. I'm sure he can give you directions for whoever is interested and doesn't know it. We'll be discussing the Eichmann trial and ways of manipulating its representation. The title is We Have Ways of Making You Believe the Eichmann Trial. Another presentation of Hillel's that is very obvious to whoever is visiting the Hebrew University and attending this conference is between Milesdorf and the bookstore. You will see a fascinating collection of posters for Jewish Zionist films, the handiwork of Hillel as curator. So Hillel, please.
Thank you very much, Menachem. Thank you, Jonathan, for asking me to be here today. Tape's not running yet, is it? Okay. Before beginning, I don't have to mention the exhibition, it's been mentioned. Interestingly enough, my closing line of the paper that I'm delivering is almost identical to what Mike just said, but you'll get to hear that in a moment. Two other little things which I couldn't have known before starting when I prepared this presentation. I didn't know what Daniel Dayan was going to say in the previous session, which I found quite fascinating, and I'd like to remark upon it that it would be quite appropriate if you were to look at what I am now going to show you as in some ways a continuation, thematically and morally, of what he had to say, in addition to which I think there is a sense in which what I'm going to show you can be seen as a specific case study of what he was talking about. The other little point to note, it doesn't change anything that I'm going to say, but it's simply something that's in the news that on Monday night Isser Harel passed away, the man who was probably most responsible for the operation which captured Adolf Eichmann, whose trial is the subject of my paper, or one of the representations of it, and without whom maybe there would have been no Eichmann trial. So I think that's a point just worth bearing in mind in a historical sense. So, ladies and gentlemen, in order to fit this presentation into the tight time slot I have been allotted, I'm going to be concise in the extreme. I shall be summarizing, paraphrasing, and omitting much that I would prefer to back up with the direct quotes that I have at hand in explaining what you're going to see. I shall also be resorting to the briefer expedient of describing a number of scenes I would prefer to show you, in order to have the time to show you in full a couple of examples that are vital to my point. The 1961 trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem was recorded in its entirety on video by producer Milton Fruchtman. 4 cameras positioned in the courtroom photographed the proceedings. The director, Leo Hurwitz, determined which of those 4 points of view would be recorded on videotape, so that for any given moment in the trial, only one of those 4 viewpoints was ever recorded. We have at least 2 witnesses to this arrangement present today. The chief cameraman, Rolf Kneller, is in the audience. And the next speaker, Alan Rosenthal, was also a member of the production team, but I will not take away his chance to introduce his connection to the trial. I was not present at the trial. I was embryonic in the most literal sense of the word. However, the man responsible for that is also here today. After the trial, the original material and a partial set of duplicates was sent to the United States. The tapes returned to Israel in the early 1970s and were housed at what is today the Steven Spielberg Jewish Film Archive. It appears that the duplicate set was intact, though some originals were missing. These tapes were subsequently copied to the 3/4-inch format, what was then the professional standard, and were accessible for a fee, but without limit on content. Throughout the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, the archive continued to give prominence to this collection in its publicity. In the mid-1990s, as the result of a decision by then-state archivist Eviatar Frizel, the State Archive funded the creation of 2 duplicate sets to the beta digital format from the originals, 2-inch video. One for use in research and production, one to remain unused for preservation purposes only. It was at that time that production of Eyal Sivan's and Ronnie Brauman's film, The Specialist, or A Specialist, as it's sometimes called, began. The Specialist is a 2-hour film created entirely, with the exception of one shot, you will see that shot, from the original material. I will mention for the record that the filmmakers displayed considerable hostility to the archive during the production, and Eyal Sivan in particular has perpetuated verbally and in writing a number of patent falsehoods relating to the issue. As regards the film itself, its makers have claimed that it is inspired by Hannah Arendt's controversial book Eichmann in Jerusalem. They have admitted to considerable manipulation of the material, both digital and by conventional editing methods. Statements have included that it is a courtroom drama, that it reflects reality as seen by the filmmakers, that it wishes to give Eichmann a chance to present his own case. Sivan has asserted that, and I quote, "Only God knows the truth," a comment which, given its original context, I view as an attempt to deny that the original unedited record of the trial can have any more validity than The Specialist. Sivan freely admits that his film reflects his viewpoint. I think it is therefore valid to share that viewpoint with you. I feel certain he would agree with me in defining himself as an anti-Zionist. I wish to be utterly clear that I am not presuming to judge Sivan for his political views. Zionism is a political movement, and Sivan has as much right as anybody to be for it, against it, or indifferent to it. I am only concerned with his political views inasmuch as he permits them to influence his attitude to the truth. Robert Wistrich, in his opening address last night, described how anti-Zionism has, in many cases, gone beyond the perfectly legitimate criticism of and/or opposition to the policies of the State of Israel and its government, to act as a cover for something more sinister, unrelated to the policies of any particular Israeli government. How far has Sivan's anti-Zionism led him? It has led him to support calls to boycott all Israeli products, research and cultural links with Israel, and all Israeli art institutions and artists. He has denied that those in today's France who physically attack synagogues and Jewish community centers are anti-Semitic. He lays the blame on the victims of those attacks, who, by continuing to support Israel even under Ariel Sharon, have confused those who are justly anti-Zionist. The 1947 UN vote on partition was, according to Sivan, an historic mistake, and the unconditional right of return for all Palestinian refugees is a topic on whose truth he is unambiguous. How does Sivan view the Eichmann trial? He has repeatedly stated that Eichmann was utterly secondary to those who staged managed the trial, that it wasn't Eichmann's trial, but a trial in which Zionism, to which, as we have seen, he is opposed, tried Nazism. This last statement was made explicitly in an interview he gave in Berlin when the film was first shown there. He has suggested that one purpose of this show trial was for the Zionist Ashkenazi elite of Israel to convey the message to the Jews of Middle Eastern origin who had been brought to Israel as a poor substitute for those lost in the Holocaust, that their oppression by the Ashkenazim was insignificant compared to what their oppressors had suffered. The memory of genocide authorizes the negation of Palestinian suffering, Sivan has claimed. The Specialist, which its makers admit reflects their views, as stated above, has become, since its release nearly 5 years ago, widely accepted as the definitive documentary account of the trial. 2 years ago, Israel's Channel 2 broadcast it as the highlight of its Holocaust Memorial Day programming. How can one account for this acceptance? It is my belief that the majority of viewers permit what they see to confirm them in views they already hold, in addition to which the most subversive techniques employed in the film cannot be detected without comparison with the unedited original. Not everyone does accept it, of course. Gabriel Bach, who assisted Gideon Hausner in the prosecution, has commented on A Specialist, I'm paraphrasing, that it was one-sided in that it chose to show Eichmann's unsuccessful defense to the almost total exclusion of the evidence that was responsible for his conviction. Before describing some scenes and showing others to you, I wish to remind you that every editing decision taken by Sivan and Brauman had two parts: what they decided to show and what they decided not to show. Every time they decided to reshape a detail of the trial to show you their conception of reality, they also decided that their audience would not see that detail as it originally was. Some of these decisions may seem minor to you, but even the smallest of them entailed many hours of work to conceive and execute. I therefore suggest that these so-called minor changes were of vital importance to the filmmakers, prompting the questions, why and what do they mean? A technique employed frequently is the superimposition of a digitally generated, seemingly reflected image of a witness over a shot of Eichmann in his glass booth. This technique also masks the use of reaction shots of Eichmann from other parts of the trial, something which happens throughout. When Eichmann asks permission to exit his booth to look more closely at a map hanging behind him, the filmmakers introduce artificial tension by showing Hausner looking significantly in the direction of the judges, and the judge pausing before giving his assent. This moment never happened. It is a fabrication, albeit a relatively benign one. The map sequence concludes with Hausner joining Eichmann at the map. Seen together from behind, the two look remarkably similar. This visual aspect is emphasized by making the soundtrack artificially inaudible at this point. Sivan has spoken much of his focus on Eichmann, a focus he claims has been neglected. He also focuses on Hausner, trying to draw parallels between him and Eichmann. Shots of both shuffling pieces of paper, fidgeting with their fingers, are juxtaposed. I remind you once more that to find these similar shots must have taken untold hours to locate within the hundreds of hours of the trial video. The big difference is that Eichmann is shown only as a helpless prisoner in the dock, whereas Hausner is a vigorous prosecutor. I shall shortly show you how a witness attempting to convey an impression of Eichmann in his prime is dealt with. In one sequence, Eichmann answers a question put to him by Hausner. The original contains one reaction shot of Hausner, this one. In the specialist, there are two. Here they are. This is the substitution. This was the original. The difference is clear. One could minimize the significance of the substitution by saying, still, all they did was take one shot of Hausner listening to Eichmann and substitute two other ones. I wish to remind you that if there is a shot of Hausner inserted as a reaction shot to Eichmann speaking and showing him apparently dismissive of and disinterested in what Eichmann is saying, the explanation could also be that the shot was taken from a dead moment in the trial when nothing was happening, and that what seems to be Hausner ignoring the question, the answer to his question, was originally Hausner with nothing to ignore. In showing you examples, I am limiting myself to two. One subtle in its technique, the other not. To begin with the unsubtle one. Here is how Hausner is introduced in the film, setting the tone for the rest of his appearances. We have the first clip. We hope we have sound here. Yes, Cole? A video? Shall I be Cole?
הוא נתן ידו למעשי אימים אשר כל המעולל אותם מוחק את צלם האדם מעל פניו. כי ישנם מעשים שהם מחוץ לתחום האנושי, שהם מעבר למחיצה המפרידה בין אדם לחיה. ואני מבקש ממצא מבית המשפט הזה. כי הוא עשה מתוך להיטות, רצון ותאווה. עד תום, כלל לא הייתה שייכות למשרד 4 עם אושוויץ, כן, שאחרים ישתר להקים תרגיס, גם אנדור קיימה. ובכיזות, אם היו בתי משנה שלמים, שישה כולם סלציה, כולם פשיסטים, כולם דיקטטורים וגטאות, כולם אנטישמים. הם לא יוכלו לקום על רגליהם. זה לא נפרקמה. לשלוח אצבע מרשיעה כלפי תא הספוטית ולזעוק כלפי היושב שם על מעשים רצון. אני מבקש שתקבעו כי בן מוות האיש הזה.
To that point, Jonathan. The contrast between Hausner and Eichmann is clear. The most active elements in this montage are the music and sound effects. I could begin to argue about the fact that after Hausner's speech takes off, we are no longer able to follow it coherently. indicating how important what he had to say was to the filmmakers. But I don't think it's even necessary. If the message of this sequence isn't clear, I suggest you go and watch a good old-fashioned horror movie and observe whose entrance is backed by scary music. That's right, the villains. The vast majority of the witnesses seen in the specialist appear within a single montage sequence, taking less than 5 minutes of this 2-hour film. I wish to show this sequence to you now, and then to focus in detail on a fragment of it, less than 20 seconds in length, in order to demonstrate what can be achieved by a sufficiently competent filmmaker with an agenda, even in such a short space of time. Tape 2.
אני קורא לאברהם אביאל. גברת אסתר גולדשטיין. קומי בבקשה.
leg die rechterhand auf dat akvarium. No, man. You were right.
Swear by Almighty God.
שאלוקים משפט זה.
משפט זה.
יהיה אמת. כל האמת.
Wahrheit sagen, sein wird, sagen will, sein wird.
Sein wird.
Meine Aussage in diesem Verfahren.
Das ist eine Aussage in diesem Verfahren.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
מה שמך המלא?
ורנר דוד מלכיאור.
ורנר דוד מלכיאור.
באת לנורבגיה יחד עם בעלך המנוח, הרב סמואל.
איזו שנה נולדת?
ב-1928.
Einige Monate vor Beginn der Deportation aus dem RSHA-Transport Bialystok.
הטרנספורטים האלו הם גרמו נזק רב להגירה התקינה. טרנספורטים. טוב. ז'ידות. למה לא יודע? לא עשיתי להם שום רע, לא הייתי חייב להם שום דבר, ובסוף קיבלו אותי במכות עד דם. זה אני.
שנהרגו על ידי איישמן.
האס-אס, ביניהם הנאשם.
ומראשם ומחזיהם נזל דם, שהיה נשבר.
One time a mother came after with her child, and when she undressed, she spit in the face of this SD man. They took the child on the legs, knocked the head against a tree, and put it into fire, and here they hanged on her feet. The other women seeing this said themselves, what for? And this happened quite a few times.
Sie ist doch tot. Menschen sind wohl verrückt. Sie ist SD.
Sie wissen, wer ich bin? Ich habe die Aktion.
He said to me that Eichmann influenced Hitler.
für בלט. ושמה בכל זאת, לסכן 15,000 איש.
Tu akop, tu afis. Więc tak, no myśmy byli bezbronni, nas zgonili.
Prędzej, to kiedy kapelcie, musimy prędzej, nogi już. A ty fiorin למשל, דור
How could you survive? What gave you the will to go? מי שהיה גר במקום לא יפה, אסור היה לו לצאת מהבית. נתן לי מכות בכל גופי, זרקתי ברות הגבייה, ושוב פעם הבאתי אותו, סחבתי את האיש והבאתי אותו לקחוניות.
יצרו את הכמות של האנשים, את המלא, שהספיקו בקושי לסגור את הדלת החיצונית של התא.
כאשר גמרנו את העבודה והיה עוד זמן והיה קר, הקאפו של הזונדרקומנדו ריחם עלינו ואמרנו ילדים בחוץ קר, תתחממו בתאי הגזים, אין שם כרגע אף אחד.
צוואר. Ja. לא, לא, יאללה, הכל בסדר. ספיץ לפני. מדוע לא התנגדתם? מדוע עליתם על הרכבת? מה שעברת, אתה הצלחת לשכוח? לא, אני בלילות לא ישן. לא יכול לישון בלילות. רודפים אחריי תמיד.
Up to there, Jonathan, please. Yes. After Abba Kovner now concludes the witness montage, the judge addresses Hausner severely about the departure from relevance to the direct issues of the trial of some of his witnesses, and Hausner is seen to unwillingly accept the dressing down. Unless I have miscounted, Abba Kovner was the 33rd of the approximately 100 witnesses, and this exchange took place before most of the witnesses you have just seen had testified. The film's editing tries to make it seem as if this criticism by the judge of their relevance referred to all whom you've just seen. The next sequence shows Hausner in his most aggressive attack on the defendant, raising his voice and demanding a yes or no answer. The editing clearly suggests that having been taken to task for wasting the court's time with irrelevant witnesses, Hausner reacts by venting his spleen upon the helpless defendant. It is my contention that by fragmenting and otherwise playing with the words spoken by these witnesses and by Hausner in the previous montage, the filmmakers wish, to varying degrees, to trivialize, mock, and misrepresent. To colloquialize the way I interpret their intentions, the message seems to be, oh, we've heard all this before. Here is the tiny detail upon which I wish to focus. Please continue to bear in mind that in the laborious task of film editing, there are no accidents or happenstance, only deliberate decisions implemented with great pains. Jonathan? And press pause. I'll tell you when to press pause.
Aber die Aktion?
He said to me that Eichmann influenced Hitler.
Just pause for a second. Jonathan? Okay. I don't need the light again. This is going very quickly now. At the center of this part of the sequence is a man making a statement that he was told that Eichmann influenced Hitler. The witness is Judge Michael Musmano, who interrogated surviving Nazi leaders immediately after the war. Here is the unedited version of his statement. It's okay, John. It's okay. I paused it, me.
Verstanden habe, haben Sie heute Morgen ausgesagt, Ribbentrop habe erklärt, Eichmann habe ihn gedrängt zu seinen Handlungen. Und Eichmann wäre derjenige, der die Hauptverantwortung trage. Habe ich Sie richtig verstanden?
אם הבינותי כראוי, אמר ריבנטרופ לך והכריז כי אייכמן הוא אשר לחץ עליו לביצוע משימותיו. לפי אייכמן היה האחראי.
If I understood you correctly in your testimony this morning, you said that Ribbentrop had informed you that Eichmann was actually the one who pressed on Ribbentrop for the implementation of various of his tasks.
That Eichmann did what?
The press. He exerted some pressure on Ribbentrop according to what urged the implementation of that.
He did more than that. He said to me that Eichmann influenced Hitler. Of course, I'll be frank to say that I did not accept that, because I could not conceive of anyone influencing Hitler any more than one could influence a belching volcano.
אומר לכם בגלוי שלא קיבלתי דברים אלה. לא יכולתי להעלות על דעתי מי שלא יהיה שיוכל להשפיע על היטלר, כפי שאינני מתאר שאדם כלשהו יכול היה להשפיע על הר געש פולט. Ribbentrop was a cringing sycophant of Hitler and attempted to defend him, indicating and stating vociferously that Hitler was not in the wrong. And he regretted so much that Hitler had made the mistake of putting so much power into the hands of Adolf Eichmann.
ריבנטרופ היה מלחך פנקה של היטלר והביע בפני את צערו הרב על שגיאתו של היטלר במנותו את אייכמן לתפקיד בר סמכה כה רב. Haben Sie Ribbentrop geglaubt? Haben Sie angenommen, dass das richtig ist, was er sagte? האם האמנת לריבנטרופ? האם סברת שנכונים הדברים שבפיו?
Did you actually believe Ribbentrop? Did you believe that what Ribbentrop told you in this respect was true?
I disbelieved him when he said that Eichmann influenced Hitler. That to me seemed nonsense. But I did believe him, and there was no doubt whatsoever in my mind that Hitler had the utmost faith in Adolf Eichmann and put into his hands, through Himmler, this program of the extermination of the Jewish people to which Hitler had referred in his speech in the Reichstag in 1939.
Stop, Jonathan. Lights for one moment. We're cutting to the chase in a second. The point here, Sivan and Brauman provide a far-fetched statement made with authority, omitting the immediate denial of its plausibility by the same speaker. Interestingly enough, this moment is in Hannah Arendt's book, which inspired them, and I quote, Mr. Musmano had sat on the trials of the administrators of the concentration camps and of the members of the mobile killing units in the East, and while Eichmann's name had come up in the proceedings, he had mentioned only once in his judgments. He had, however, interviewed the Nuremberg defendants in their prison, and there Ribbentrop had told him that Hitler would have been all right if he had not fallen under Eichmann's influence. Well, Mr. Musmano did not believe all he was told, but he did believe that Eichmann had been given his commission by Hitler himself, and that his power came by speaking through Himmler and Heydrich. Sivan does not follow Arendt, but it's very close to something which I don't have time to read you. It's almost identical in the findings for justification in the David Irving case. Did almost exactly the same thing as Sivan did. The very end of this, the man, and this is unomittable, but it's very, very short. The man between whose appearances Musmano is sandwiched is Joel Brand. Let's look at that moment again. Okay.
Wer ich bin? Ich, aber die Aktion. He said to me that Eichmann influenced Hitler. Warte, für Brut, für warte.
Okay. Pause here. Pause there, please. I submit that this tiny extract has about it an air of grotesque jollity. I wish to pause for a moment here to allow you to see the last frame the filmmakers use before they cut away from Brand. The last image the viewer has before the cut is what seems to be the satisfaction of someone who has just been entertaining, an impression heightened by the fact that the edit also cuts off the beginning of what promises to be a loud burst of laughter in the courtroom. Let's view this one last time. Are we playing, Jonathan?
I will also. Just a moment.
Okay.
He said to me that Eichmann influenced Hitler.
And now here's the unedited original. Brand is telling of a personal encounter with Eichmann.
What happened in that meeting?
Zwischen Vorzimmer und Zimmer in der Türordnung stand ein Tisch. Ich kam bis vor den Tisch.
תפסיקו שם את הפטפוטים.
President of court, you youngsters there in the court, please keep quiet.
There was an anteroom and a room, and the table separated the anteroom from the room, and I reached as far as the table. Eichmann was standing there in front of the table with his arms akimbo, and
Sie wissen, wer ich bin? Ich, aber die Aktion.
And he bawled at me, if I may say. He barked out, "Do you know who I am? I am in charge of the operation."
Europa, Polen, Tschechoslowakei, in Österreich durchgeführt. Jetzt täte Ungarn an die Reihe kommen.
In Poland, Czechoslovakia, you know what happened, and now came the turn of Hungary.
What action did he mean, Mr. Brandt?
Ich wusste welche Aktion. Sagte Aktion. Nein.
He said action. I knew what action he had in mind. He used the word action or operation.
Dass hätte mich prüfen lassen, mich vom Joint und von der Sochnut, und festgestellt, dass ich noch leistungsfähig wäre, das war sein Wort.
He further added that he had my case examined through the intermediary of the... he examined my case as a man of the joint and the Sochnut, and he said that I am a man still capable of some output. This was the word he used.
What else did he say to you?
War bereit, mir 1 Million Jupp zu verkaufen. Warte, für Blut, Blut, für Warte. Das waren sein Stimmfall.
You can cut there, Jonathan. My last words. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we are dealing with filmmakers whose agenda is sufficiently important to them that they have not shrunk from adding laughter to the soundtrack of Testimony in the Eichmann trial. I do not believe that I'm either lucky enough or clever enough to have accidentally found the only such instances of this type of manipulation in the film, and assume that a systematic comparison would reveal it at work throughout. I wish to end on a direct quote from A.L. Sivan, spoken in New Delhi at an event entitled Experiments in Truth in May 2001. There is no moral value to be linked to a technique itself, but only to its use can it be judged. Ladies and gentlemen, for the time being, I rest my case.
Or perspective on this presentation by my colleague Alan Rosenthal. We're so short on time, and Alan has published and done so much over the past few years that we won't go into detail. His background is in law and in communication, Stanford University. Alan has both produced, practiced what he preaches in the communication department, produced, written, and lectures brilliantly, and we'll just get a little example of that in a short response to Philip's presentation.
In David Lodge's novel, A Small World, there's a guy who has to give a talk at a conference, and he hasn't written the talk. And the conference moves from Rome to London to Paris, and he's still wondering what to do. And it comes right to the end, he hasn't written anything except the opening statement, and suddenly there's a terrorist attack, he doesn't have to give his talk. When you come to the end of a day like this, which was supposed to finish half an hour ago, the temptation is just to say, I'll tell you a joke, that's it, goodbye. Thank you. Well, I can actually tell you some more, but I'm going to put aside all the notes that I had. As Hillel mentioned, I worked at the Eichmann trial, and I worked with Rolf Kneller here. It was a pleasure, the 5 months working with him, and a pleasure to see him again. Besides that, I've dealt with Eichmann over the years. I did the first transfers of the 2-inch tape to 1/4-inch, and later on I did a film for the Jewish Museum on the Eichmann trial, And very recently, last year, I did a film with Nissim Mosek on Eichmann's Secret Diaries. So I have an enduring interest with Eichmann. A couple of months ago, I was asked by Film Quarterly to write a review of The Specialist. And I said, why? And he said, well, this is a fantastic film. It's the greatest film on Eichmann and the Holocaust and so on. And I said, you must be out of your mind. And I proceeded to explain why. There have been various deliberate anti-Semitic films in the past. You're familiar with Jew Sus, you're familiar with The Eternal Jew of Fritz Hippler. These are films noted for their anti-Semitism. The audience knows it. The SS that received The Eternal Jew knew exactly where it's coming from. Here I think we have something much more grave. We have a film which purports to give an overview of the Eichmann trial, a picture of Eichmann, and to the innocent, which is probably 90% of the viewers, this is, as Hillel said, this is the story. And it is so distorted, it is so untrue that I get angry just thinking about it. He's done, Sivan, an amazing thing to take a trial which was supposed to show the world what happened during the Holocaust, what Eichmann was like, and reverse it 180 degrees. What I was going to, after that, I'm going to throw away. There are just 3 or 4 points that seem to me worthwhile making. First of all, I think a filmmaker has to be, when he's dealing, or she's dealing, with history, you try to be objective, you try to be up to date with the latest historical information, you try not to be ideological, you try to be fair, you can't be objective. And I think Sivan meets none of this criteria. If we just take the trial itself, Hillel showed you what went wrong with the actual editing. Let me deal more with what is absent from the film. There's a total misconception of Hausner. There is no sense of the audience. There's no sense of the judges. There's no sense of the deputy prosecutors in the film. Wannsee, which is very, very important, is given a throwaway treatment in the film. There is no sense of Eichmann's deceit. There's no sense of Eichmann's organization. And one can go on. The filmmaker, and it's something Hillel didn't mention, takes a tremendous amount of time dealing with the Judenrat, which Hannah Arendt, of course, does in her book as well, showing that here the Judenrat were assisting the Nazis to send the Jews to the camps. And it goes on, and it takes a major part of the film. The sense of the resistance, which was vital to the trial, which came out and lingers in the mind of anybody of the trial, was missing. We saw Abba Kovner. We saw him for about 10 seconds. This is what Abba Kovner actually said. The ghetto fighters were working against incredible odds. You must understand this. You must understand the unimaginable conditions to set up a fighting organization when the people are not yet aware their fate is sealed, to tear down their divisions, to organize when there's no central authority. When you're paralyzed, terrorized is no easy task. And when you're surrounded by 3 walls of enemies, the Germans, the Ukrainian killers, and the local populations, what can you do? The witnesses who actually confront Eichmann and who see Eichmann are almost totally missing from Sivan's film. I went through some of their statements. Moritz Fleischmann from Austria. He addressed us in harsh language, the like of which I've never seen before. He warned us not to approach. Obviously, we would have to, if we approached, he would deal with us in another time. Franz Mayer from Austria describes something vital again missing. He describes the Eichmann system. What was Eichmann doing? This is the system as described by Meyer. He built the Eichmann system, his smooth, efficient immigration assembly line. You put in a Jew at one end, and he passes through the building, and as he passes through the building, he's stripped of everything, so that when he comes out, he has no house, no money, only a passport and a visa to leave immediately. There's another witness who confronted Eichmann, who we see passing for 2 seconds, Dean Gruber. Dean Gruber said of him, "My impression, he was like an iceberg, a block of ice, what we call a mercenary trooper. The mercenary who, when he doffs his uniform, doffs his conscience and his reason." So one can go on with the things which are missing from the actual trial. Besides being a picture of a trial, this is a picture of Eichmann. And I think any serious scholar, filmmaker today would have gone a little bit deeper. They might have used some comments of Hess on Eichmann or Wislicenzi. Now Hess, who was the commandant of Auschwitz, wrote a memoir. Now I agree it's a suspect memoir when he was about to come on trial. But Hess mentions in his memoir something like this: "When I was in doubt, I thought of Eichmann. When I was trying to push the children into the gas chambers and my knees were buckling, I would think of Eichmann, who said to me, 'You've got to do it, because if we don't win this battle now, this battle will come down to the future generation.'" More seriously, Sivan talked of Eichmann being a witness, of the things that he said. We hardly hear Eichmann in the film. But Eichmann did leave a witness. And I'm not talking about the memoirs which were released last year. Those were memoirs written when he was facing the judge, when he wanted to save himself. The memoirs which put down continuously, "I was a cog, I did nothing, I did this." But he wrote another set of memoirs. In 1956-57, when he was freed in Argentina, he sat down for 6 months with a Dutch fascist journalist who had actually belonged to the SS, called William Sassen. And over wine and beer, he dictated 66 tapes of his memoirs. Now, those memoirs were never used in the trial, only a few pages of them where he had the transcripts marked by Eichmann. The judges refused to accept transcripts without the tapes, and Hausner couldn't get hold of the tapes, or he could only get hold of the tapes if he couldn't use them at the trial. Those memoirs to Sassen, which appeared fractionally in Life magazine, in a French magazine, were then forgotten, seemed to me to give the best record of Eichmann. Now I'll just read you a few of the notes from Sassen. On Hungary, the idea of the blood for goods. Such an idea, swapping trucks for people, never crossed my mind. I always prefer to see the enemy dead than alive. In the Sassen memoirs, he mentioned how nobody could escape. And that's a point, again, not brought out by Sivan. If you go through the trial and through the memoirs, you see that Eichmann let nobody go. When the partisans in Yugoslavia, he gave the command for them to be shot. He gave the command for children to go, for the trains to move in France. When the German government itself wanted to free a few Dutch industrialists, Jewish industrialists, he said, "No, we cannot set the example." In Hungary, he came into Hungary with his own Eichmann commando. He said, and he says, "Now the master has come to finish the job." In Hungary, Horthy, who was the regent, was getting worried, and he gave orders for the trains to stop. Eichmann had sent a train from Gestapo camp to the border. Horthy gave an order for the train to stop. It came back. Eichmann went in again and made sure that train went. In Hungary, in 2 months, he managed to kill or send to the gas chambers almost 500,000 Jews. On the question of deceit, I interviewed a guy called Zev Sapir for the film I made last year. Zev Sapir appeared at the trial. This is what he said on a meeting with Eichmann, which illustrates the deceit, which I do not remember seeing in Sivan's film. Sapir. Suddenly Eichmann appeared. We saw him. He appeared very strong, dressed in a green SS uniform. Other officers formed a half circle around him. And he began to give a speech. We saw him. And he began to give a speech, to talk. Unbelievably in Yiddish. He knew it perfectly. And he said, "Dear Jews, you're going to a place, a very beautiful and nice place. The children, your children, will learn at school, and you will work during the day, and at night you'll return. It will be all fine and good, and you'll have a complete and happy family life." One more example of deceit. He went into Greece with this Licenzi, and he told the Greeks, "Look, there's a wonderful place. It's called Auschwitz, but you can only go there if you're married. Sign up, get married quickly, things will be fine." And that's what the Greek Jews of Thessalonica believed. I'll give you, because of time, just the last comment. We see Eichmann in Sivan's film. The perpetrator has become a victim. Hausner has become the perpetrator. In the end, people left after Sivan's film almost poor Eichmann. What was he like? I'll just give you that in his own words, because it seems to me the things he said to Sasson absolutely sum him up. When he appeared at the trial, he consistently tried to say, "I was a cog, I did nothing." But when he spoke to Sasson, this is what I imagine. At least I imagine he said what he really believed. And this is what he said. Sasson asked him, "Are you sorry?" And he said, "Yes. I'm sorry for one thing, that I wasn't hard enough and I wasn't tough enough. That I didn't fight these damn interventionists enough. And now you see the result, the creation of the State of Israel and the reemergence of the race. That to me is the real Eichmann."
Fascinating session, and with great regrets I will close the session at this point. I'm sure each and every one of the presenters is available to address comments and answer questions further in the conference and on other occasions, but since we have to move on to the Cinematheque, with many apologies, I close here. Thank you all for attending this fascinating session. And I want to thank our presenters, all 5 of them. Thank you very much.